Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to do another lightning round episode. My day was not supposed to be piled up like it is, and unfortunately, it ended up piled up like it is. So, because of that, I have to do a lightning round today. Honestly, my days moved around so much. I would have had to have done it no matter what, because I originally had one plan that got, pushed away, but then something else came up, and it's one of those days. When it's less stressful for me, I just need to do it. I know it's not as good of a video, and I know that it would be better to have the questions on the screen with the proper editing and the cuts in between. I know, I agree with you, I get it, but sometimes it just has to be the way it has to be. Savage on Tuesday. Announcement regarding that. I'm going to have bosses in the thumbnails. At this point, normal mode's been out for 2 weeks. The game's been out for over a month at this point. I have to cut it at some point. I know that doesn't mean it's been an easy time for absolutely everybody, but for thumbnails, for specifically Pandemonium, the boss will be in the thumbnail. That's just what it's going to be. I'm letting you know now. If that means you need to unsubscribe for a week or whatever, that's perfectly okay. At least we're on the same page about that. But that is your fair warning. I might make mention of it in another video because I'm probably going to be working on like 4, 5, 6 videos before a Savage even comes out, plus the guides. Crazy. Anyway, let's get started. First, thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. They don't have to support the channel, but they choose to. All my content's available for free here, and they just decide to use that. So they can, and I'm grateful for them. Pages of Darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni, thank you for going above and beyond, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. If you have a question for next week, throw it in the comment section of the video below, and hopefully I'll get to it. And hopefully it won't be another bad lightning round. So with that, let's get to a bad lightning round. All right. Let's get to it. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey there, Haps. How you doing? First time asker here. Good. We got off to a good start on this one. Mostly played DPS, but something about Sage caught my attention more than the other healers. The idea of going over a healer role for the first time is a little daunting, especially one that starts at 70. Am I biting off more than I can chew? No, but I would say that it would behoove you to maybe play White Mage first. White Mage is kind of like the most basic thing that you can play when it comes to a healer. And then you can build on those principles with the gimmicks of Scholar, of Astro, of Sage, and it might be a little easier. That being said, as long as you take your time, even if when you unlock Sage, you go and do lower level dungeons with it, that might even be of enough assistance. First priority, make sure people don't die. Second priority, if you're not having to cast any heals, make sure you're DPSing. That's especially important on Sage since some of their heals come from DPSing. As long as you're doing those two things in those two orders, then picking up all the rest of the job mechanics along the way shouldn't be too difficult for you. It's not like it's that much different than playing any other job that has its own gimmick. So, best of luck. Irritated sleepy cat behind Happy wins. She's not irritated right now, but she might be. You can't really see her because... Okay, now she's irritated. Never mind. A few happy birthday wishes here. Some stuff about time skips. Out of curiosity, how would colorblind people handle mechanics like fire and ice debuffs? Well, fortunately, fire and ice are two very different colors. I am extremely colorblind. I'm officially diagnosed as trypnopian, but the damage to the cones in my eyes is so bad that I'm effectively every form of colorblind. I don't see black and white, but I can't do red greens. I can't do blues and purples. I can't do yellows and greens. They need to have vastly different contrasts for me to be able to identify the color. And even then, I normally need a reference point, like a stop sign I know is red. I've been educated to know that that's red. So if I see that shade of color, I know that it's red. But if I don't have a reference point, then it doesn't work. So fortunately, with fire and ice debuffs, they're vastly different colors. So as long as you know which one is which, and you can do that through a simple hover over and then visually identifying it, then in my opinion, that isn't too hard to actually do. And I may not know what color they are precisely, but I know what they look like and how they identify compared to one another. Now, if you're seeing in black and white, might be a bit more of a problem. So I don't have a solution for that because I don't see in black and white. Anyway, somebody asking about Trust EXP. Assume this means the EXP they get themselves. Yes, that is correct. Trusts do gain their own EXP when you're running them in avatar mode. If they're 81 plus, the player character is 81 plus. I'm not sure I understand this question. The amount of EXP you get from a dungeon is not the same EXP your trusts get. You, with a trust, will get the same amount of EXP you would get as if you were running from a player, which is roughly half a level with rested XP right now. The trusts will get that value at the top, and that's what they're going to get out of what they need. So it just allows you to calculate how many dungeon runs your trusts need per dungeon to move on to the next one or to get that next level. So that's all that really means. Moving on. This one's a spoiler question. It's just what story development surprised you the most in Endwalker. I'm not going to, again, because I'm doing the rapid fire one, I'm still not really paying much attention to spoilers, but I'd say that, I'll just say around level 83, I didn't see it happening like that, but it definitely caught me off guard a little bit, what happens at level 83. Pretty much the capstone event of level 83. Do you think that Square could add some of the new Endwalker characters' hairstyles at some point? I think they could. One of them's kind of similar to something we already have right now. And I think they will add some of the hairstyles of some of the newer characters in Endwalker, given enough time, personally. Let's see here. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, too. First show of the new year. I guess I should have led with that, huh? Oops. Happy New Year, everyone. What's your opinion at the ending of the 5th zone of the expansion? I enjoyed all the Endwalker story. I really need to talk about it in its own separate video. But, dude, I was very pleased across the board. It's really hard for me to say anything, but just like, I was pumped. That was it. It was such a, it was, I don't want to say too much, but I was pumped. We'll go with that. We'll go with that. Let's see. Why do most AoE abilities have fall off damage other than to stop me from destroying large packs of mobs even quicker? So it is usually because of that. They want you killing dungeons at a specific speed, and they want there to be some method to the madness of selecting a target when doing multi-target. This is really more prevalent in very niche encounters where there might be 2 or 3 targets, available at one time. And so in generic AoE packs, it ends up feeling like, why bother? Because I'm just going to AoE everything down anyway. So it's there for some very niche balance reasons. Realistically, it's not all that important for them to do it that way. And they could just lower the potency across the board with no fall off, and it would probably feel exactly the same. So that's really all there is to it. Nothing fancy. I'm hungry is the thing. My body's like, you should go eat. And I'm like, no, I'm in the middle of recording. Stop. Which jobs from 1.0 carried over to the launch of 2.0? All the base classes except for Arcanist. So look at Marauder, Gladiator, Pugilist. I almost said Rogue. Rogue is not one. Also not a base class, believe it or not, because you can't start the game as a Rogue. Pugilist, Lancer, Archer, Thaumaturge, Conjurer. That's all of them. Those are all of them. And then, yeah, anything Arcanist and onward is new to A Realm Reborn and onward. Does knowledge of the 1.0 story improve the 2.0 experience? No. 1.0 barely had any story. There's a few mildly interesting scenes and a few lore tidbits that have come back around. Alexander references a character named, what's his name? Oh man, how could I forget his name? Travanchet, there you go. Who is a character from 1.0 who we still really don't know everything about, although we do have our suspicions about Travanchet's true identity. But realistically, knowing he existed before doesn't enhance his character in any capacity. It's really more like a nod to a 1.0 character. So realistically, everything we need to know about 1.0 is explained pretty well. It's not very interesting, the 1.0 story. So I'd say it doesn't really improve it much at all, as someone who played the story for 1.0 myself. Let's see. Quick question about using potions tinctures. Been trying to work them into my rotation and how surprised at how unresponsive they are. They do not queue like actions. Is there any trick to using them? You just got to press them till they go. They're really annoying to use, and they have really long animation delays. So your pain is everyone's pain. You just got to press. My honest advice is to press them about a third through your GCD. Don't press them as soon as your GCD finishes. Wait to press them even a single time until you're about a third through. You eventually kind of get used to pressing it at the right time, and then it'll feel responsive enough. But yeah, no, they're always kind of a pain. And if that doesn't work, just keep spamming them. Just spam in the OGCD. You need to use them because you're not going to use anything else in that OGCD anyway. So you might as well. But if you get that timing down right, like properly, then there's no chance that the pot will actually clip your GCD. And that's pretty important, but it takes a little bit of practice. My friend and I are getting into more difficult content. In our prog, keeping everyone on rotation means throwing half a burst window out. Yeah. Ugh. So this is actually a pretty major thing of getting prepared for super endgame content, is understanding burst alignment in relation to boss mechanics. And this is a boss-to-boss adjustment that needs to be made. The one rotation you learn for your job is not good enough to do every single fight in the game. There has to be some degree of adjustment that you learn to make. I'm starting to feel like delaying our burst until the boss gets back would be better, but it would delay everyone's rotation. So again, this largely depends on which job is doing what. So for example, if you're doing EX1, the boss actually jumps away at a time that's not that inopportune, but depending on how long that ad phase takes, could make for a really awkward return. Not to mention the boss then jumps again. Again, I'm not going to say much about the boss, but the boss does a few times where he leaves the arena and he can't do anything. So timing that gets very, very tough. Most people would wait till after he comes back the second time to really make sure that everyone stays aligned at that exact moment. And that shouldn't be too bad. EX2, on the other hand, people basically have to delay their 2 minutes by like 30 seconds to line them up with the ad phase there. And then normally, if you do that, they come back up during the mechanic right after, where there's a whole bunch of movement, right at the end of that first new mechanic. And then you can make sure everyone is aligned from there. But discussing these things with your team is the most important thing. So you have to party finder 2 people, so communication is lacking. If you just tell them when 2 minutes are going to be, that's normally enough for the party finder. But compromises like this are a big thing, and practicing them is great for getting ready for a raid tier. It's actually really good that you're even considering this, because it is a major, major thing going into clearing a raid tier, especially when you're looking to do it week 1, and you need that alignment in order to get through the 3rd and 4th bosses. So you're on the right track. You just have to communicate it a little bit better and work on it a little bit more. And as long as everyone's cognizant of it and willing to make adjustments, then it'll usually turn out okay. Somebody asked me, can we donate money for your liquor of choice? Nah, honestly, as much as I love my whiskey shelf, that isn't in here, it's in the other room. If I were to receive money, it would not be for that. As many people may or may not know, I have been largely helping my mother for the better part of a year with all sorts of issues back on the other side of the United States. And so anything I have that's spared generally goes towards that. That is my top priority. So the fact that last year was such a good year for me has been nothing but a boon to both myself and her. So I know this has nothing to do with your question, and I know you don't care about that, but it's important to me to establish that I don't really like receiving tips or donos or anything like that for, I guess, entertainment or comedy. I have too much of a motivation that's on the other side of it, I suppose. Let's see. I spent most of my time in Shadowbringers and Bozja and Zadnor. Can't wait for a new adventuring zone. So when can we expect a new adventuring zone? If we get one at all, I wouldn't expect it until 0.35. There's a bit of a question because they did say they have plans for a deep dungeon. And, well, I mean, we do have Stormblood with both Heaven on High and Eureka, but it's a question of if we'll get both a deep dungeon and an exploration zone in Endwalker, and if we do get both, if their relationship is any different than the Heaven on High Eureka one, because Eureka you couldn't use to level, you had to use Heaven on High. But in Shadowbringers, where we didn't have one, a deep dungeon, then we leveled through the adventuring zone. So what route would they take with it? But 0.35 would be the earliest I would expect one. It could happen in 0.25. Eureka was in 0.25, but I guess I'm just letting you know my expectation, not that that's set in stone, you know? Let's see. But Yoshi P, a couple words could describe his vision for Endwalker that he had not mentioned to anyone, not even the devs. Oh yeah, this whole platinum question thing, I don't understand. I don't have any input on that. I've been asked about the whole Yoshi P mentioning the whole platinum thing. You know what? Here's the thing. If he's talking about the color of platinum, I really can't help. So, you know, I don't have any input on that one, I suppose. This one does say it's a spoilery question. Von Jenkins here. So, I actually answered this question spoiler free not too long ago. So to the first part of your question, I'll just, say, I guess, yes. That's the answer to the first part of your question is yes, without me actually answering, all too much. And for the second part of your question, I'll answer it very, very shortly, sort of. Only one person did the thing that you said. So hopefully you understand that. Next question. Let's see. So I've been wondering about the recent changes to Dark Knight and seen people wanting Heavensward Dark Knight. Not me. How was it back then? Very busy. They basically had to choose to enhance abilities with Dark Arts. Most of the time it came down to just being their damage combo that they would enhance. And they had a couple of other options as well. It's really just an APM related thing. And that was also how all of your MP was spent, was through Dark Arts. So you didn't have like Flood or TBN or anything like that. You just chose to use Dark Arts to enhance your defenses or your offenses or anything in that capacity. I wouldn't want that back. It's not that much different than now, to be honest. It's like if your OGCD you're pressing Shadow for was instead an OGCD that just enhanced your next skill. But I'm not gonna hyper advocate for Dark Arts to ever return. I think there are other things we can do to modern Dark Knight to make it a little bit more enjoyable that don't involve getting Dark Arts back. That's just me. I'm not Dark Knight main, so you shouldn't really care what I think, because I won't ever be speaking for tanks efficiently, I suppose. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Do you have any recommendations for Old Trials raids you can solo or duo for mounts minions? I mean, almost all of A Realm Reborn, all of Heavensward, even except for like A4S, I think is still not soloable, but you can duo that very easily. Stormblood gets tricky. You can duo Susanoo, you can duo Tsukuyomi, you can duo any of the Stormblood ones at this point. The raids also, you can duo. I don't think you can duo O3S, but I don't think you care, because you want mounts and minions. You want like 04, 08, 012. 012 might be a tough sell. I wouldn't know yet, but that's a tough sell. 04, very easy to solo, though, and all the extremes. Then you go into the Shadowbringer stuff, and I think that's still a little off limits. By the end of the expansion, you can probably duo some of that stuff pretty easily, but it might be a little tough now. You also have Rathalos. Rathalos really easy to solo now with Unsync. So I have a ton of videos on me soloing a bunch of stuff. Any of those you can solo, and if you can't solo them personally, then you could easily duo them. So I would just look through my solo videos on my channel, and you'll probably get a good idea of everything that is possible. Though you'll probably want to be on a tank for a vast majority of those things. Let's see. Have you spotted any locations in the new zones that could be setting up a deep dungeon? Dude, I'm one of those people who everything that's mildly suspicious is a deep dungeon. I still want a Ronkin deep dungeon. Ever since the MSQ thing that happened in Shadowbringers, I've wanted a Ronkin deep dungeon. I wouldn't mind if we went back to this expansion. I'd be totally down with learning about the Ronkins a little bit more. They seemed really in tune with some old stuff that was happening. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many locations. There's just so many. There's a place in the Dravanian Forelands that we thought could be a deep dungeon. There's Ronka, like I mentioned. I remember there was another location in Alamigo, I think, that we thought could be a deep dungeon. There's a lot of places. So I couldn't pick just one. There's a lot all over the map, especially the newer maps, if you ask me. What's this one? Happy belated birthday. Thank you. You're closer than others to Yoshi P. I wouldn't say I'm in any way close to Yoshi P. I get to talk to the guy in an interview like 2-3 times a year. I mean, I get that that's still closer than some people, but he doesn't answer my calls. I don't have his number. You know what I mean? So I don't get to make requests or anything like that. So the request is to get the long fall meme dance routine as an emote in game. And I'm sure you're not the first person to request that, but I am no more able to request something like that than you are. He's not going to look at my request and be like, oh, Mr. Happy asked me. Guess I'll do it. Doesn't work that way. He takes my feedback as much as he takes anyone else's feedback, and not a single bit more. Even if he gets to ask me face to face what I think about something, he often asks me to speak for the feedback I'm seeing and not of my own personal opinion. Someone was new and just wanted to say thanks for all you do. Oh, thanks. I hope you have a great year too. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Happy belated birthday. Thank you. I hope you're doing well. I think they'll update PvP skills to add an Endwalker when the new PvP's out. So here's the thing. They're completely redoing all the PvP actions, but what we're concerned about with 6.1's PvP is they're making it sound like every job can do the exact same thing except your limit break, which is individual to your job, which I don't know how I feel about. Now, they haven't said exactly that that's what they're doing, but they're making it sound like that's what they're doing. So the answer is, yeah, we'll have new PvP actions, but in a way of trying to force healers to be less of a main concern, that seems to be the route they're potentially going. Please just wait for more information, because what I'm saying could not be how it's working out. So when we get 6.1 live letters and stuff like that, we'll make sure to keep an eye on them. Next one, have a bonus of your pizza emote actually summoning pizza. That would be nice. What do you think is the best way to get over tanxiety? To just do it. Tanking is not difficult. People overthink it a lot. I'm not a tank main. I have no issues tanking. I literally just go through and just try to make sure that I'm aware of the advice I was given. Press my cooldowns, don't mess up my combo, and make sure I'm dealing damage and taking damage. That's it. It's just a few basic principles that, as long as you're mildly cognizant of them, you can complete stuff on tank. And that's all that it really takes. Let's see. Started playing Dancer, made the switch to Samurai, running into my problem with my fingers not liking the job. Samurai's pretty bloated right now. I don't blame you for that. This is something that just comes with practice. If you want to learn a job efficiently, you're not going to be good at it. People think I'm just good at every job. Hell no, I'm not good at every job. There's a few jobs that I'm practiced on and I could play. And then there's probably one or two that I'd consider myself above proficient in, maybe even an expert. But you got to practice. If you don't put in practice, you just forget. You don't have the muscle memory. You can't do. And sometimes you got to move hotbar stuff around. Maybe your hotbar setup isn't correct. But this is all part of the learning experience. You have to figure out what works for you best and then practice, practice, practice. There's another happy birthday. Thank you, Boop. And then we have one here. Played all 4 healers since A Realm Reborn on controller. I know you mean there's 4 now and you've been playing heal. Don't worry. I understand. And Walker Marks, the first time I've had difficulty with button bloat on. You know what? The second I saw the word button bloat, I knew you were going to say Astro. Because it's my only complaint about Astro. Well, that and clarifying redraw. I think we get some button bloat fixes for Astro, if not on Tuesday, in the next few months. Because everybody feels this way about Astro. That play and that draw and play should not be different buttons. That minor arcana and crown play should not be different buttons. And that undraw doesn't need to exist. And that also we should probably get stacks of clarifying redraw instead of just the 1 per card. So those are the changes I do actually expect to happen to Astro at some point. So don't worry, I completely agree with you, and I'm hoping that they will adjust it. And even then, that's still only 2 less buttons, but that'll help. That will most assuredly help. Missed a few NPC cameos during the MSQ. Curious, you might compile any bonus appearances, alternate dialogues. I considered it. There's a few cutscenes in particular that I'd like to see all the different versions of, but they're all very long cutscenes at the same time, so we'll see. That's a big maybe. That's a big maybe. Especially because I don't know how many alternate versions of that I can even track, given how many alternate versions it seems like there will be for some of these, for some of those quests that you're talking about. I have a question on balancing. It seems like people are either worried or eager for Reaper or other jobs to be nerfed. Should people be? So in a 0.05 patch, it's very unlikely they nerf a job. The main reason being that because they're releasing a new Savage tier and they gave nobody a heads up that they were nerfing the jobs, that's usually a safe indication that they don't plan to mess with what people were already planning to do for the coming raid tier. Now, for patches like 0.1 and onward, it may be deemed necessary to nerf Reaper, nerf Monk, or, buff this, buff that, make changes that are more sweeping, But for this coming Tuesday, I wouldn't expect more than Summoner, Paladin, and Dancer potency buffs, and I do expect Astro and White Mage are going to see some minor changes as well. White Mage's MP economy, I assume, will be helped out slightly, either with a thin air change or by lilies giving MP back every time you use them, or... and then Astro, I think they could possibly get clarifying redraw changes and or button bloat changes going into Tuesday. But I wouldn't expect them nerfing things on the patch that a Savage releases, just maybe somewhere down the line. And if you're wondering about nerfing Reaper at all in the first place, I think it is likely that Reaper has something taken away, whether it be its potency or the effect of Arcane Crest being changed. One of those two things, not unlikely to happen. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's for certain, but I'm not going to act like it's unlikely either. Let's see. Questions regards to Summoner. Do you think Bahamut and Phoenix forms would benefit from having usable stacks of their main GCD that builds up over their big hit? No. I think there are other issues with Bahamut and Phoenix. I think the fact that Phoenix is weaker than Bahamut is an issue despite being a higher level skill. So you just lose potency when you hit level 80. And there are other issues with Summoner, I think, that could buff them up a little bit and put them in a slightly better spot than they are now. But I don't think this is it. I don't think this is the solution to anything. Now, there could be something they do in the future. You make mention of that here. Excuse me. Yeah. This is the other problem with doing one takes, is moments like this where I feel like I need a sip of something. Hold on. There we go. Coffee. Much appreciated. Yeah, they could make a change like this sometime in the future to help introduce other summons. You make the mention of that right here. I just don't think that's going to be a change that comes outside of a new expansion, to be honest. Can I answer a question about Dungeon EXP? If the amount of enemies you kill affects Dungeon EXP? No. Just the bosses. That's it. Just killing the bosses. It's the only thing that matters. Think they'll add glamour plates? They are always trying to add more glamour plates. Right now, they have concerns that do not involve glamour plates. So I wouldn't expect anything glamour plate related to be happening anytime soon. Just feel like their efforts in terms of managing space in the game has shifted a little more towards playing it in the first place. Not that there's direct overlap between those two things, but I just imagine the effort's not focused all the way there. That's all. That's all. This person has it flagged as an Endwalker. Spoiler. Just asking me if it's just asking me if I see any unique mechanics in any of the new content. I mean, yeah, but every mechanic, even a unique mechanic, usually breaks down to basic elements that when you've been raiding long enough, you can just identify them at a glance. It just maybe confuses you for a second because it doesn't visually appear like other things do, but it doesn't usually take long to pick up on it and relate it to something you've already seen. So I'd say yes and no, more in the no category than the yes category. Will we get advanced jobs? No. Okay, that's an easy one. Let's see. Down here. Okay, we might actually be coming close to the bottom here. Oh, nope, never mind. I saw questions start to disappear, and normally that means we're getting close to the end of the questions. But you know, that is what it is. Let's see. We have this one here. Question about data centers. Do you think with the upcoming Aussie data centers, there's a chance we'll get a Latin American one? I answered this a few weeks ago. The answer is if there is enough demand and they can make enough marketable reason to do it, it's possible. But they may consider a localization mandatory for something like that. And hiring a localization team to translate 10 years worth of text is a bit of a monumental task and may dissuade them from even trying in the first place. So I'm going to say, listen, I'll never say no to this. I think it's a good idea. I think it's an unlikely thing anytime soon, unless they are willing to just say, no, it's just going to be in English. And I don't know that they really want to do that, because that seems kind of half-assed. You know what I mean? Let's see. Bunch of questions. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. Fortunately, a lot of them are just that. Oh, man. Yeah, there's a few comments. So somebody was actually asking me about this single year timeline. So I'm not going to say too much about the actual Endwalker story here to explain this, but we learn through just text, just reading dialogue that comes from NPCs, that the events of Endwalker and the events of A Realm Reborn all happen in the same year. This has been a long-running theory that the game exists in a time bubble, an expanding time bubble, where the game takes place within a year, but they just keep cramming events in to fill that space, and it just kind of stretches it out further and further. The ultimate one-year time bubble, of course, in existence is probably Ash Ketchum, who I do think turned 11 at one point, but essentially just filling that space and that void. I guess you could say Stewie and Family Guy too. We could go with that. But essentially, what ends up confusing people is seasonal events. We have things like Heavenstern. We have things like the Starlight Celebration. And how can we have year after year these celebrations when there is when it's only been 1 year in game? And fortunately, we have an answer from the developers in that seasonal events are not canon. No seasonal event is canon to the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. They might reference things, but the occurrence of them is a strictly MMO mechanic style thing that does not mix and match with the rest of the lore that we get in the game. So canonically speaking, these celebration types exist. and they have their own storylines, and they might reference things that happen in the rest of the game, and they might explain things, but they also canonically don't exist for the sake of not having to deal with the inconsistencies of having 10 years worth of seasonal events, but only a year has actually passed in game. So that's the explanation for that. And again, the devs have explained this in the past, especially with collaboration events, which they also say collaboration events are non-canon to the Final Fantasy XIV universe. So that is good news for me as far as I'm concerned. Oh man. There's a question that asked, okay, so a completely spoiler-free question. I know people have asked what job you would be if you somehow were transported into the 14 world isekai style. You, being a reasonable person, have given the only correct answer in that you would choose to be a normal citizen that doesn't have an immediate death wish. I have never said that. What I have said is I hate this question because just because you are isekai'd into a world does not mean you are a badass instantly. You are still you at the end of the day. And I know that ruins the fantasy imagination that we have, but you're going to fucking die. Even if you are a normal citizen, you're going to fucking die. You're going to die a horrible death, way worse than one you would probably die any other way. All because you wanted to live in the Final Fantasy land. I don't want to be anyone in them because I think it's a silly question / prospect. Because, listen, our world sucks out here. Their world sucks in there. I'm not going to trade one for the other, one especially without internet. I'm not doing that. That's not happening. So I'm going to stay in this world as much as I might regret that decision at some point, you know? And then there's another summoner thing. I can't deal with any more summoner questions. I feel like I answer summoner related shit every single week. There's another spoiler question about this I can't really explicitly answer without referencing some things in Endwalker, so I'm going to have to skip by. Sorry, Jace. I think you asked me something like that on stream anyway, so if not, you'll probably just come ask me on stream where I can answer it a little bit more freely. What are your thoughts on the physical range in terms of how they play? I love all three physical range. I know some people have some gripes about Bard. I personally don't agree with the gripes about Bard. But I love Machinist. I think Dancer, once it has some potency buffs, is going to be fantastic. They fixed almost all of my issues with Dancer from Shadowbringers, and it was a very small list in the first place, to be completely honest with you. And Bard, I just love the speed, the flow, the output, the damage, the reward for playing it well, and playing around other people who play well. So good. Oh, man, it's just it's so good. Somebody else just asked me what I think of Dancer, and there, you just heard my answer for that. Let's see, more happy birthdays, happy belated. Let's see, pre-world visit hunts, the smaller scale and community was more fun than the current way it's done. Do you have any old content that you miss? No, I don't. Quite frankly, almost everything that's moved forward. Oh, you know what? Actually, I do have one answer. I miss old desynth because now everybody just desynths everything and all my materials ain't worth jack. I miss when they were worth something because people weren't doing desynth because there was a little bit of an investment to get into it. So that's my answer. It's a bit of a selfish answer, but hey, that was it. And that looks like it's the last question I can actually answer. Most of the remaining ones are happy birthdays and all sorts of stuff like that. There is one person saying the video is pointless if you answering the questions and not everyone knows what the question is. That's why I'm reading the question and telling you what the question is, and then I answer the question. So, when you watch the video, you'll pick that up. So I would finish watching the last video, and then I would watch this one because, you know, that's just how it ends up panning out. Apologies if I missed your question again. Sorry for I don't want to, like I said, even I don't want to do the rush order business here, but it's just been that crazy for me. Okay, so sometimes I gotta do what's right for me while still doing what I can for you. That's sometimes just how it has to be. But with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned because we'll have all sorts of stuff. Be sure to look for my Savage First Clears and my Savage Guides and all that stuff we're going to be doing the next week. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.